Good afternoon and welcome back to the Florida Weather Watch YouTube channel. And on the screen, you are now seeing my brand new banner, my brand new logo that I've created for the Florida Weather Watch YouTube channel and for all my social media forecasting networks now. So before I continue into the forecast, if you could let me know in the comments below what you think about my brand new banner and logos that I've created for the Florida Weather Watch, it would be greatly appreciated if you could do so in the comments below. As well as making sure you hit that like button, please, to let me know that you appreciate the forecast I am creating and providing for you, as well as making sure you hit that subscribe button down below and you hit that notification icon so you can get notified whenever I either do video updates like this one or when I will be doing some live streaming when there are severe weather events happening. So, welcome to the new brand of the Florida Weather Watch and a new chapter in the Florida Weather Watch going forward. Uh, so, we're going to get started today with your upcoming weather in Florida, ladies and gentlemen. And boy, do I have some good news for you this week in the state of Florida. Uh, when we go ahead and we take a look at what the current happenings in the atmosphere right now. Let me go ahead and zoom in a little bit for you so you can see this a bit better, folks. Bada boom, that looks a lot better to me. Okay, so good. So here is the current water vapor imagery from across the Atlantic, across the eastern United States. Uh, and when we look at the water vapor imagery, the reason why I show you the water vapor imagery first, ladies and gentlemen, is the fact that um, it tells us how weather systems move in the atmosphere. Sure, you can look at visible satellite imagery. Sure, you can look at the bright little beautiful colors of the rainbow with RGB infrared satellite imagery. But water vapor imagery does tell you much more of the story because it could tell you not only where storms are moving and how they flow together, but in this view, it actually could tell you where you have drier air and moist air, which actually makes a difference. And actually, something that we have noticed on here, like in yesterday's video, is that we have had that backdoor cold front come through, folks, across Florida. You can actually really see this boundary very, very well here, folks. You can see it very well. You can see a very well defined boundary right here across the Southwest Atlantic all the way up here. And you can see where this drier air has really pushed down into the state of Florida. Some of the dry air still has not really reached the Florida panhandle, but that will come through probably in the overnight hours tonight. And so what you're noticing here is wherever you see these yellow colors, ladies and gentlemen, that's dry air. And when you're seeing this yellow coloring and it's actually getting into Florida here, many of you may have noticed, especially across the actual peninsula itself yesterday, a very refreshing easterly breeze coming through and bringing that dry air across Florida here. So we've had this dry air that has fed into much of Florida here, and thanks in part to our former um, Hurricane Idalia up here. So actually, this is the remnants of Idalia up here in the northern Atlantic right now that has caused drier air and high pressure to build in behind. And this I'll take a look at later in my tropical update at the end of the video here. This is a system that is developing in the central Atlantic, and we do have to monitor it for it to become our next named storm. But ladies and gentlemen, there's no reason to panic, no reason to be concerned. I really don't like when the news media tries to start saying, oh, there's going to be a formidable hurricane coming in the Atlantic. It's in the center of the Atlantic. It's not even a tropical storm yet, folks. And there's plenty of time to watch, so don't pay attention to the fear-mongering media, ladies and gentlemen. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's go ahead and switch gears. So that's what's currently happening in our atmosphere. We have dry air coming in through the Florida Peninsula right now, making things feel more comfortable. And when we go ahead and we take a look at the computer forecast models here, what I want to show you today is the reason why we're having this drier weather and why that's going to be a pretty dry week ahead. Okay, so this is what's called the 500 millibar height anomalies. I know that sounds fancy. Pretty much what's it telling us in this model, these models here, is whether or not we have higher pressures in the atmosphere in the mid levels, which controls weather pretty much, or if it's going to be lower pressures and stuff like that. So pretty much the bottom line is wherever you see these red colorings, that means that the air is, what you call it, the air is going to be is typically more dry in this case. So what we're looking at here right now is in the center of the southeast right now. We do have high pressure that is now settling in right here. So right now you can kind of see with this little ring right here, we got high pressure now starting to build into the southeast. At the surface, it's actually off here into the Atlantic. So when they both combine like this, we're going to see some pretty nice weather, folks. So what I want you to pay attention to is these red colors stay here for the next several days until maybe Friday when there could be a change in the pattern. So what we're looking at right here is higher than normal pressures in the mid levels of the atmosphere. And as I step this through time, this is Tuesday, tomorrow afternoon. It sinks down here to the Gulf of Mexico. Still dry air, still pretty calm weather. And there's no real change happening. Off to the side here is just little storm system in the Atlantic, nothing to worry about. And then as we get through into Wednesday and Thursday, the pattern may start to change a little bit on Thursday, as what's going to happen is eventually, according to the models here, we may get a change in the wind direction and the flow across Florida here. And instead of being from the east, it'll come from the west. And that's about it, ladies and gentlemen. So pretty much the bottom line is for the next several days ahead, we're going to have high pressure and control. And the way that we can definitely tell that we are going to have high pressure and control in drier conditions is when we take a look at the relative humidity. Now, when we look at the relative humidity here, okay, obviously with relative humidity, what that tells us is how does the air feel? Is the air feeling very wet, very moist, very humid? Or is it feeling dry? And when you have the nighttime hours, especially from like 11 o'clock at night to 8 o'clock in the morning, obviously these relative humidities are going to be higher because of the fact that the lower the air temperature is, the closer it gets to that dew point that you hear about a lot. That dew point tells you a measure of at what point, at what temperature does the temperature drop to in order for water to fall and water to be able to condensate. So what I'm going to focus on here is not necessarily the nighttime or the morning hours. I'm going to focus on the afternoon hours because the afternoon hours is when you have the temperatures rise. But if those dew points don't rise, okay, what you're going to notice is the air is actually going to feel drier in the afternoons. And you're going to notice that here, like these colors down here represent the percent humidity in the atmosphere. So the percent humidity is just a simple calculation where you take the dew point temperature, you divide it by the actual temperature, and then you multiply it by 100, and bada boom, you get your relative humidity. Well, ladies and gentlemen, down here at the bottom, obviously 100% means the air is fully saturated and moist. Pretty much anything between 80 to 100%, you're dealing with deep humidity, very muggy, very moist air. From 60 to 80%, you're dealing with air that still it can feel wet, but it's not as humid. When you get to 40 to 60, that's where you're going to notice the big differences in the atmosphere. That's where you're going to notice that the humidity is comfortable. It's not to a point where you're going to be, your sweat can't really dry because of it. Okay, so 40 to 60 here, these light green colors is where it gets comfortable. And then from 40 downward, that's where you're dealing with dry air. So as I step this through time, I'm going to focus at the timestamps here for the afternoon hours, ladies and gentlemen. The reason why I'm going to do that is because it's going to tell us a much better story as to how it's actually going to feel in the atmosphere. Okay, so let's start from the beginning here. So as I step it through time, notice the colors, especially in the afternoon. It's 8. This is for 8 o'clock in the morning today. Okay, and look at that, 2 o'clock this afternoon. Look at all the brown colors. This is what I look for dry air, ladies and gentlemen. So wherever you're seeing all these brown colors right here, this is pretty dry air right here. So this is dry air right here. You can notice some dry air down here in South Florida here too. It's going to naturally be a little bit more moist around the lake, Lake Okeechobee, because of the evaporative effects from the lake. But much of Florida is now going to feel this, and I'm sure you're feeling it today, is going to be less humid. And as I step through time, this is the nighttime hours. Remember, when temperature drops at night, it gets closer to that dew point. So naturally at night, it's going to be, the humidities are going to be higher. The relative humidity is going to be higher. So what I look for is when this, now we're getting 11 o'clock tomorrow, 2 o'clock tomorrow afternoon. So when we look at 2 o'clock tomorrow afternoon, there's a lot of areas again here. Looking at dry air from the panhandle all the way down into northern Florida here. Big time dry air. And then in South Florida right here to Southwest Florida right here, to Southeast Florida, you're dealing with dry air again. So a lot of these areas are going to be, over the next several days, look at this. I go into the afternoon again on Wednesday. Wednesday, even drier. There could be some dew points in the low to mid 60s on Wednesday across the state. That's some very dry air. That is some very dry air. Once you get into these darker browns, you're looking at 22% relative humidity in Jacksonville Wednesday afternoon. Sure, it may get hot. Let's take a look. When I click on this sounding, it can tell me the surface temperature here. The surface temperature would be 99 degrees Fahrenheit according to this model. Oh, wow. I don't know about that. I don't think it's going to get quite that hot in Jacksonville. But look at that dew point of 53 degrees in Jacksonville. It's going to be warm in the afternoons. But the big difference you're going to notice this week is that drier air in the afternoons, where it's going to be far less humid. It's going to be more of a dry heat, something more akin to what you would feel in kind of more of desert environments. And that's because, again, going back to this high pressure that is settling in behind Idalia here, with this high pressure we got going on here, settling in across the Atlantic here and bringing this drier air across Florida over the next few days, that's what's really driving this weather pattern. So the bottom line is, ladies and gentlemen, we're not going to have rain until maybe Friday in the northern part of Florida, where there may be a bit of a weak disturbance that comes by Friday. But for all this week, all of Florida is going to be pretty dry. And it's going to be a lot less humid. Yes, the temperatures are going to still be high. Let me go ahead and just show you this. Okay, I'm going to show you the temperatures here. Timestamps at the top again. So when we look at this afternoon, Monday afternoon, 90s across the northeast, the northern half of the Florida Peninsula. Mid to upper 80s across South Florida here into the Florida Panhandle there. And then when we go into tomorrow afternoon, same story, 90s inland, 80s at the coastlines here. And then when we keep on going into Wednesday afternoon, folks, we see temperatures again uh, getting pretty hot in Jacksonville. I think it's 98 degrees in Jacksonville. That could be a record high Wednesday afternoon for those folks in Jacksonville. They're 99 on Friday, according to the American model, 97 for Orlando, 95 for Gainesville. Getting very hot, but very dry at the same time. So it's kind of a balance right there. It's when the air gets drier, it can heat quicker. Okay, it's just basic physics. Okay, and then when we go to let's see here. When we go to Thursday afternoon, same story. 100 degrees in Jacksonville on Friday, according to the American model. 96 in Tallahassee, 95 in Gainesville. But down in southern Florida, where you're going to still have that easterly breeze coming off the ocean, only 87 in Miami, only 85 in West Palm, only 87 in Port St. Lucie. So along the coastlines, it's going to be cooler because of that easterly breeze coming off the ocean. But once it meets the friction of the land, it gets hotter. Okay, so we're going to shift gears now into the Atlantic. And ladies and gentlemen, as I said yesterday, Gert is going gone. This was the last advisory by the National Hurricane Center. It is way gone. We have Katia, that yesterday was a tropical storm. It is now a tropical depression, and it will dissipate tonight. And then we have two tropical waves that are coming across the Atlantic here. This one obviously is the bigger concern. This one has a 90% chance now of becoming our next tropical storm, and our next tropical storm would get the name of Lee. Okay, and the good news, ladies and gentlemen, is that even though it looks concerning seeing this path right here, a lot of the forecast models are starting to come. I know it's well in advance, but a lot of the forecast models, what they're showing is eventually that high pressure over here across the Atlantic will shift off to the west. And then eventually over here near the United States, there would be a storm system that comes off the United States. And that would allow for a bit of a valley here between the high and the low for this storm to, once it goes west northwest to northwest like this, eventually there will be an alley more than likely that forms, and this is pretty typical of storms that get pretty strong according to the models. There could be an alley that takes it out to sea and away from the United States. Okay, so going back to what I was saying earlier about the news media. Okay, the news media obviously thrives on sensationalism. Okay, first of all, again, this isn't even a tropical storm. It doesn't even have a name yet, number one. Number two, the models are still, when we get to this point over here, this area right here where most of the models end, that is 1 week out, and it's nowhere near the United States, folks. 1 week out. There's a lot of time. So all those news media, those TV channels, everything saying formidable hurricane forming, could be threat for Northeast United States, as I had a couple of people ask me today. Folks, stop listening to the fear-mongering, sensationalist media, especially for things that haven't even formed and are still 10 to 15 days away from making any sort of land impact. If it's going to, there's nothing to worry about. No need to panic. No need to be concerned. Plenty of time to watch. And honestly, based upon my feelings and based upon what I see in the computer forecast models and what I know about climatology, is if this storm gets into this region here and it's strong and it becomes that formidable hurricane, the stronger hurricanes get, the more likely they're going to pull out to sea. That's just climatology. That's just basic meteorology for you. So, ladies and gentlemen, going back to the headlines and everything here, And going back to the new branding of the Florida Weather Watch YouTube channel here, nothing to worry about. Enjoy the dry weather ahead. Sure, it may still be hot in the afternoons. It's going to get hot, especially in northern Florida. But the air is going to be drier. The humidity is going to be lower. And we're not going to have to deal. We don't have any tropical storm or hurricane threats anytime soon. So enjoy the weather. And for those of you still recovering from Hurricane Idalia, I hope your recovery is going as well as possible. I know it will take a long time for many of those areas to rebuild. And again, as a man of God, I am hoping God wraps his loving arms around all of you in northern Florida, helps you recover, helps make sure that you have the resources you need to recover. It's going to take time. And I know one thing about Floridians, especially those in the Gulf Coast who've had to deal with multiple major hurricane strikes. Y'all are some of the most resilient people out there. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to close out this forecasting video. Thank you very much for joining. And as I always close out all my videos, I'm going to close it out with the quote from my late great cross-country coach, Jim Richardson, who said, "There will be weather, whether or not. But whatever the weather will be, as my new logo says, I'll be keeping you ahead of the storm." Have a wonderful rest of your Labor Day and a fantastic week ahead.